Devin Williams, 36 years old, made $58,000 a year, and on a Tuesday afternoon at 3:14 p.m., his world was reduced to the size of the small, cracked screen of his 5-year-old smartphone. He was sitting on an overturned 5-gallon bucket in the back bay of his shop. Williams Diesel and Duty, a name he'd been so proud of. The air, thick with the smell of grease and hot metal, usually felt like home. Right now it felt like a cage. His hands, permanently stained with the ghost of engine oil despite the harsh orange-scented cleaner he used, were trembling. On the other end of the line was his wife, Karina. Her voice, usually a low melody he found comfort in, was sharp and brittle, like glass breaking. "You need to listen to me very carefully, Devin," she said, her tone devoid of any warmth. "I'm in Austin, at the lawyer's office. Uncle Robert's will was just read." Devin's heart, which had been hammering against his ribs like a loose piston, stalled. Uncle Robert, Karina's estranged great-uncle, a man she'd met maybe 3 times in her entire life, had passed away 2 weeks prior. He was a recluse, a myth in her family, rumored to be wealthy from old Texas oil money. They'd sent a simple, respectful $75 floral arrangement to the funeral home, a gesture Devin thought was appropriate. "Okay," Devin said, his own voice sounding distant. "Is everything all right?" A laugh crackled through the phone. It was a sound he'd never heard from her before, high, sharp, and utterly contemptuous. "All right? Devin? It's more than all right. It's perfect. He left it all to me. The entire estate." She paused, letting the weight of her next words land with the force of a physical blow. "It's $20 million. $20 million. The number was so absurd, so outside the realm of their life. A life of carefully managed credit card debt, of choosing the store brand cereal, of celebrating anniversaries with a nice dinner at a chain restaurant instead of a vacation, that he couldn't process it. His mind was a blank screen. He looked around his shop, at the half-disassembled Cummins engine from a city bus, a job that would net them $4,200 and keep the lights on for another month. "Karina, that's incredible," he stammered, a slow smile starting to form on his face. This was it. This was the break they'd always talked about. He could finally expand the shop, maybe hire another mechanic, stop working 70 hours a week. They could buy a house, a real house, not the cramped $1,400 a month apartment in the Heights they'd lived in for 8 years. But her next words vaporized his nascent joy, leaving behind a chilling void. "No, Devin. It's incredible for me." The casual cruelty in her voice was a surgeon's scalpel, precise and deep. "I need you to go home tonight and pack your things. All of them. The new life, my new life, it doesn't include you." He couldn't breathe. The air in the shop suddenly felt thin, unbreathable. "What? What are you talking about? Karina? We're married." "A mistake we can now afford to correct," she said, her voice like ice. "Let's be honest, Devin. You and your little garage. It was never enough. My family knew it. I knew it. This money, it's a validation of my bloodline, of the Vance potential. Something you could never understand. I'm moving into a penthouse in River Oaks as soon as the funds clear. I've already put a deposit down." He could hear the rustle of papers, the click of a pen. She was signing things. She was erasing him. "But the shop," he said, the words feeling like ash in his mouth. "I built this. We built this." "You built it with my support," she snapped. "My family helped with the initial loan, remember? That $2,000 from my mother? I'll consider that my investment, and I'm cashing out. You can keep the shop. It's all you're getting. Be grateful for that." The lie was so blatant, so audacious, it almost made him laugh. Her mother's loan had been a birthday gift 5 years ago, and it was $500, not $2,000. Every other penny, every drop of sweat, every sleepless night had been his. "So that's it?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. 8 years? You just throw it all away because of money?" "Don't be so dramatic," she scoffed. "It's not just money, it's a new beginning. A chance to be who I was, always meant to be. I expect your things to be gone by tomorrow morning. I'll have a service come by to change the locks. Don't make this messy." The line went dead. Devin sat there, the phone still pressed to his ear, listening to the silence. The rhythmic clanging of a wrench on steel from the front bay, where his part-time guy, Luis, was working on a Ford F-250, seemed to come from a different universe. He looked down at his hands. Strong, capable hands that could diagnose a faulty fuel injector by sound alone, that could rebuild a transmission from a box of parts. Hands that had held Karina, that had fixed the leaky faucet in their apartment, that had worked until they bled to put food on their table. And in the space of a 3-minute phone call, they had been rendered worthless. He was just a grease monkey, a temporary placeholder until something better came along. And something better had just been valued at $20 million. The humiliation was a physical weight pressing down on his chest, making it impossible to stand. He had no idea, in that moment of absolute devastation, that Karina had just made the single greatest mistake of her life. Have you ever had a moment where the floor just falls out from under you? Let us know in the comments how you found the strength to get back up. To understand the depth of the betrayal, you have to understand the life that was shattered. It wasn't a life of glamour, but it was a life of substance, built brick by brick with Devin's own 2 hands. Their 8 years together were a tapestry of small, shared moments, each with its own invisible price tag. Their apartment, a 2-bedroom on the 2nd floor of a walk-up in the Heights, cost them $1,450 a month, a figure that was a constant source of anxiety for Devin and a constant source of complaint for Karina. The walls were thin, the plumbing was suspect, but it was clean, and Devin had painted the living room a warm shade of gray himself with 2 gallons of $38 Behr paint from Home Depot. He remembered the day they moved in, carrying a second-hand $200 IKEA couch up the narrow stairs, both of them laughing and sweating. He'd promised her then, "One day, babe, we'll have a house with a yard. A real house." She had smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I know we will," she'd said. He hadn't realized her "we" was conditional. Their life was a study in contrasts, a quiet battle between his contentment and her ambition. Devin found joy in the tangible. His proudest possession was his Snap-on toolbox, a gleaming red behemoth that he'd paid for in installments, a total investment of over $12,000. It represented his skill, his independence. His daily uniform was a set of $45 red cap work shirts and $60 Carhartt pants, practical and durable. His one indulgence was a pair of $180 Red Wing boots he bought every 2 years, a testament to his belief in buying quality that lasts. Karina, on the other hand, craved the intangible glow of luxury. She worked as an administrative assistant at a downtown law firm, making a respectable $48,000 a year, but her tastes far outstripped their combined income. She would linger on websites for designer brands, sighing over a $3,500 Chanel handbag or a pair of $900 Christian Louboutin shoes. She saw their $58,000 combined annual income after his shop expenses not as a foundation to build on, but as a cage to escape. "Look at this, Devin," she'd say, holding up her phone to show him an Instagram post of a former college classmate on vacation in Tuscany. "Bianca's husband just made partner. They're staying in a villa that costs $1,000 a night." Devin would look up from the stack of invoices he was reconciling at their small, $150 dining table from Wayfair. "That's nice for them, babe. We're building our own thing here. The shop cleared an extra $900 last month. We're getting there. Getting where, Devin? She would reply, her voice laced with a familiar disappointment. To another year of this? Of driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic with 140,000 miles on it? Of using my $250 Michael Kors bag from 3 years ago while everyone else has the latest Gucci? He never knew how to respond. He thought they were a team. When he'd taken the massive risk of leaving his steady job at a dealership to open his own shop, it was with the dream of building a future for them. The initial investment was every penny of his savings, a meager $15,000, plus a $25,000 small business loan that he was still paying off at $550 a month. He worked tirelessly, often sleeping on a cot in the office to finish a job on time. He remembered one brutal week 3 years ago when the transmission on a city bus contract went sideways. It required a full rebuild that took him 40 straight hours. Karina had brought him a sandwich and a thermos of coffee. As he ate, his hands shaking from exhaustion, she had looked at him with what he thought was admiration. "You work so hard," she'd said softly. Now he replayed that memory and saw only pity in her eyes. She wasn't admiring his work ethic. She was lamenting her circumstances. Their financial discussions were always tense. She managed the day-to-day bills, but he managed the business finances. He knew every dollar that came in and went out. He knew that their grocery bill averaged $600 a month, that their utilities were another $250, and that after all their expenses, including the loan payments for the shop, they often had less than $400 left over for savings or pleasure. He tried to make it special. For their last anniversary, he'd saved for 3 months to buy her a $600 David Yurman bracelet, a delicate silver chain she'd pointed out in a magazine. She wore it for a week, then it disappeared into her jewelry box. When he asked why she wasn't wearing it, she'd shrugged. "It's nice, Devin. It's just a little simple, you know." His heart had cracked a little that day. The bracelet wasn't just silver. It was 3 months of skipped lunches and extra side jobs. He thought back to her Uncle Robert. A ghost. Karina's mother would occasionally mention him, always in hushed, reverent tones. Robert was always the smart one. Invested his oil money in tech back in the 90s. Karina had absorbed this family lore, turning a distant relative into a symbol of the life she felt she deserved. She had sent him a Christmas card every year, a generic $4 card from CVS with her name signed in a flourish. It was a lottery ticket, a low-cost investment in a potential windfall. And now it seemed her ticket had been called. The facade of their marriage, already cracked and weathered, was about to be demolished by the weight of $20 million. The normalcy he had cherished, the simple domestic scenes of cooking dinner together or watching a movie on their modest $400 Vizio TV, were not the foundation of a life, but merely the waiting room for a better one she always knew was coming. The week after the phone call was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Karina returned from Austin on Wednesday morning, not to their shared apartment, but in a chauffeured black Cadillac Escalade that cost $150 an hour to rent. She didn't come inside. She texted him at 9:03 a.m. "I'm outside. Bring down the spare key." Devin, who hadn't slept more than an hour a night since her call, walked to the window. He saw her step out of the SUV. She was a different person. She was wearing a cream-colored pantsuit he'd never seen before, tailored and sharp. It looked expensive. Her hair, usually worn in long, beautiful braids that he loved, was now styled in a severe, straight bob. She looked like a stranger, a sleek, cold predator. He grabbed the spare key from the small bowl by the door, his heart a cold, heavy stone in his chest. When he handed it to her on the curb, she didn't meet his eyes. "The service will be here tomorrow to change the locks. Your things need to be out by then." She dropped the key into a brand new, bright red Prada handbag, A purse he knew from her late-night browsing cost at least $4,000. "Karina, can we please just talk about this?" he pleaded, his voice hoarse. She finally looked at him, and her eyes were flat, devoid of emotion. "There's nothing to talk about, Devin. I'm upgrading. It's that simple. You should be happy for me." She turned and got back into the Escalade without another word, the door closing with a soft, expensive thud. The vehicle pulled away from the curb, leaving him standing in a cloud of exhaust and humiliation. That afternoon, the deliveries began. A brand new 85-inch Samsung frame TV, a $4,500 television for an apartment she was kicking him out of, arrived via a Best Buy delivery truck. Devin had to sign for it. The delivery men looked at him, then at the massive box, then back at the cramped apartment. The judgment was silent but heavy. An hour later, a man from a high-end men's store delivered a suit bag. Karina called him as the man was leaving. "That's a suit for you," she said, her voice dripping with condescending charity. "It's an Armani. Cost me $3,800. You'll need something decent to wear to the probate finalization on Friday. You can't show up looking like, well, you." The cruelty was breathtaking. She was dressing him up like a doll for his own execution. He took the suit bag into the bedroom and laid it on the bed. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He thought about throwing it in the dumpster, about setting it on fire, but a cold, quiet voice in the back of his mind, a voice he hadn't heard in a long time, whispered, "Wait. Be smart." On Thursday, she escalated. She posted a picture on Instagram. It was a selfie of her, smiling radiantly, holding up a set of keys. The background was a stunning view of the Houston skyline through a floor-to-ceiling window. The caption read, "Secured the new digs. The view from my River Oaks penthouse is simply divine. Here's to new beginnings and leaving the past where it belongs. Hashtag upgraded, hashtag River Oaks, hashtag unapologetic." The post garnered hundreds of likes in minutes. Friends, family, even people Devin thought were his friends, commented with congratulations. "You deserve it," one wrote. "So happy for you, Kay," wrote another. No one asked about Devin. It was as if he had already ceased to exist. He knew from her previous complaints that penthouses in that part of River Oaks, in one of the gleaming glass towers that looked down on the rest of the city, started at $7,000 a month for a lease. She hadn't even received the money yet, but she was spending it with a terrifying confidence. That evening, her parents called him. Her father, Richard, a man who always looked at Devin's grease-stained hands with a barely concealed sneer, got straight to the point. "Devin, I trust you're not going to make this difficult for Karina," he said, his voice smooth and authoritative. "This inheritance is a family matter. It's Vance money, and it's staying with the Vances. We're all very proud of her for finally getting what she's owed." "What she's owed?" Devin asked, the cold anger finally starting to burn through the shock. "Of course," Richard said. "She's had a hard life supporting you and that hobby shop of yours. It's time she was taken care of properly. We're expecting you to sign whatever papers are put in front of you and walk away quietly. It's the least you can do." The call ended. The message was clear. He wasn't just being erased by his wife. He was being erased by her entire family. They were rewriting history in real time, painting him as a charity case, a burden she had graciously carried. Every bolt he'd tightened, every engine he'd rebuilt, every dollar he'd earned to build their life was being dismissed as a hobby. The outrage was a physical thing, a hot pressure building behind his eyes. He walked through the apartment, looking at the life they had shared. The photo on the nightstand from their wedding, a small, simple ceremony at the courthouse that had cost them less than $500, the mismatched coffee mugs in the cabinet, the worn spot on the arm of his $150 recliner where he sat every night. It was all a lie. A stage set for a play where he was the only actor who didn't know his role was temporary. The final, and perhaps most devastating blow came late Thursday night. He was packing a few boxes, methodically wrapping his collection of vintage mechanic manuals in newspaper. His phone buzzed. It was an email from Karina. The subject line was divorce proceedings. The email was brief and brutal. Devin, attached is a draft of the divorce settlement prepared by my attorney. It grants you sole ownership of the business, Williams Diesel and Duty, and its associated debts, and waives any claim I might have to it. In return, you will waive any and all claims to my inheritance and any assets acquired by me from this point forward. It is more than generous. I expect you to sign and return it before the hearing on Friday. Do not contest this. Karina. He opened the attachment. It was a cold, legal document that stripped him of 8 years of his life in 4 pages. The generosity of her offer was laughable. She was giving him the business that he already owned, the business he had built from nothing, along with its $18,000 in outstanding loan debt, while she walked away with $20 million. She was framing it as a gift. The audacity was dizzying. He sat down on the floor, surrounded by the cardboard boxes that represented the wreckage of his life. The sheer, unadulterated contempt she had for him was a poison. But as the initial wave of pain and anger subsided, it was replaced by something else, a cold, hard clarity. She thought she had all the power. She thought he was just a simple mechanic she could discard like a used oil filter. She had no idea how wrong she was. The turning point didn't come with a bang, but with a quiet phone call on Wednesday afternoon, just hours after Karina had demanded the spare key. Devin was staring at the shop's balance sheet, the numbers blurring together, when his personal cell phone, the cheap $120 Samsung he kept separate from the business line, vibrated. The caller ID read Marcus Thorne. Marcus was one of Devin's oldest friends, a guy he'd known since they were kids playing basketball on the cracked courts of a Third Ward park. While Devin had found his calling under the hood of a truck, Marcus had found his in the dense pages of law books. He was now a successful probate attorney with a corner office in a downtown skyscraper, billing at $650 an hour. They didn't see each other as much as they used to, but the bond was still there, an easy, unspoken understanding. Devo, man, how are you? Marcus's voice was warm and familiar, a stark contrast to the coldness that had filled Devin's world for the past 24 hours. Hey, Mark, I'm hanging in, Devin replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Good to hear, man. Hey, listen, this is kind of random, but I was doing some research for a new case, and a name popped up on a probate notification list that I recognized. Karina Williams. That's your wife, right? Devin's stomach tightened. Yeah, that's her. Her great-uncle passed away. Right, Robert Vance, Marcus said, his voice now shifting into professional lawyer mode. That's a big estate, man. A very big estate. We're talking 8 figures. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Estates this large can get complicated. And sometimes they make people act crazy. Just wanted to make sure you were doing okay. The simple human concern in Marcus's voice almost broke him. She's acting crazy, Mark, Devin confessed, the words tumbling out. She called me yesterday, said she's inheriting $20 million, and told me to pack my bags. Said the new life doesn't include me. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had lost all its casual warmth. It was sharp, focused. She said what, Devin? Tell me exactly what she said. Devin recounted the entire conversation, including the part about the River Oaks penthouse and her claim that he could keep the shop. He could hear Marcus typing furiously in the background. Okay, Devin, listen to me, Marcus said, his tone urgent. "This is important." "Did she mention a will? Or a trust?" "She said the will was read," Devin replied. "Okay, a will has to go through probate court. It's a public process. But a trust is different. It's private. However, all estate-related documents, including trusts, have to be filed with the county clerk." "Her uncle lived in Harris County, right?" "Yeah, I think so." "I need you to do something for me. I need you to go down to the Harris County Clerk's office on Franklin Street. Go to the Records Division. I want you to request the file for the estate of Robert Allister Vance. It's public record. You have every right to see it. Look for a will, but more importantly, look for a trust instrument. Specifically, look for any amendments or revisions. I'm seeing a flag in the system that a revised document was filed about 14 months ago. That's unusual. I want to know what that revision says." A flicker of something, not hope, but possibility, ignited in Devin's chest. "Why? What do you think it is?" "I don't know," Marcus said honestly. "But $20 million makes people do strange things. And filing a revision to a trust just over a year ago means something changed, something significant." "Go now, Devin. I have a bad feeling about this. Call me the second you find anything." 30 minutes later, Devin was walking into the imposing granite building of the Harris County Civil Courthouse. He felt small and out of place in his grease-stained work pants and a faded Houston Astros t-shirt. The Records Division was in the basement, a vast, quiet room that smelled of old paper and dust. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. He filled out a request form with trembling hands, his own name feeling foreign as he wrote it. The clerk, a kind-faced woman with her hair in neat cornrows, returned a few minutes later with a thick beige folder. "Here you go, hun, estate of Vance. You can take it to one of the viewers over there." Devin sat down at a small carrel with a microfiche reader, a machine that felt ancient. The file was thick with legal documents, financial statements, and property deeds. He scrolled past the original will, dated 10 years ago, which did indeed name Karina as a major beneficiary. His heart sank, but then he kept going. Tucked at the very back of the file, dated 14 months prior, was a document titled Irrevocable Trust Amendment and Complete Restatement of the Robert A. Vance Living Trust. His breath caught in his throat. He leaned closer to the screen, the glowing green text illuminating his face. The legalese was dense, a thicket of impenetrable jargon. But then he found the section he was looking for. Article 4, Distribution of Trust Estate upon Settler's Death. He scrolled down to subsection 4.1. The original text had been crossed out. In its place was new language. He read it once, then twice, then a third time, his mind struggling to accept the words on the screen. It read, "Upon my death, all previous beneficiary designations are hereby revoked in their entirety. My entire trust estate, including all real and personal property, stocks, bonds, and financial accounts, shall be distributed free of trust to one sole beneficiary, Devin Williams, of Houston, Texas, husband of my great-niece, Karina Williams." Devin felt the world tilt on its axis. It wasn't Karina's name, it was his. He kept reading, his eyes scanning the page, frantically. The document went on to explain the reason for the change. "For 14 months, I have been in silent observation of my family. I have seen the casual greed and the sense of entitlement, but I have also seen the character of Devin Williams. Through private inquiry, I have learned of his tireless work ethic, his honesty, and his deep integrity. He is a man who builds, who creates value with his own two hands. He does not wait for a handout. This is the character I wish to reward. He has proven himself a man of substance, a quality sorely lacking in the Vance bloodline. This inheritance is not for my family. It is for the man who has shown more character and loyalty to my niece than she has ever shown to him. It is my hope that this gift will allow him to build a legacy of his own." The document was signed by Robert Vance and notarized by 2 independent witnesses. It was ironclad. Devin leaned back in the hard plastic chair, the air rushing out of his lungs. He felt a dizzying mix of shock, vindication, and a profound, unexpected sadness for the lonely old man who had seen everything so clearly from a distance. Karina hadn't just misjudged him. She had misjudged her own uncle. She thought he was a fool, a simple name on a lottery ticket. But he had been watching. All along, he had been watching. Devin took a picture of the document with his phone. Then he carefully, methodically, photographed every single page. He had the evidence, and he knew exactly who to call. The meeting with Marcus took place at 7 p.m. that same Wednesday, not in his friend's polished downtown office, but in the quiet back room of a small family-owned barbecue joint in the 3rd Ward. The location was Devin's choice. He needed to be on his home turf, surrounded by the familiar smells of smoked brisket and sweet tea to process the tectonic shift that had just occurred in his life. The air was thick with the scent of hickory smoke, a grounding aroma that cut through the sterile legalese of the trust document. Marcus arrived looking out of place in his $2,500 Tom Ford suit, but he took it in stride, ordering a plate of ribs and a Lone Star beer. He didn't say a word until Devin had laid everything out on the red and white checkered tablecloth. The story of Karina's call, the texts, the cruel dismissal, and finally, the pictures of the revised trust on his phone. Marcus looked at the phone, swiping through the images, his expression growing more and more grim. He put the phone down, took a long sip of his beer, and looked Devin straight in the eye. "She has no idea," he said, his voice a low whisper. "She's operating under the assumption that the old will is the controlling document. She has absolutely no idea that he cut her out and gave everything to you." "Is it real, Mark? Is it legal?" Devin asked, his voice tight with a mixture of hope and fear. "It's more than legal. It's a fortress," Marcus said, tapping a finger on the phone's screen. "It's a complete restatement of the trust. It supersedes any previous will or trust document. It was properly signed, witnessed, notarized, and most importantly, it was filed with the county. It's the official, legally binding directive of the estate. The $20 million. Devin, it's yours. All of it." Devin felt a wave of dizziness. He leaned his head in his hands. "What do I do? Do I call her? Do I tell her?" Marcus held up a hand. "Absolutely not," he said firmly. "You do not say a word. You are going to let her walk into that probate hearing on Friday, thinking she's about to be crowned a queen. Right now, she is your single greatest asset." "What do you mean?" "I mean she's creating a record of her own bad faith," Marcus explained, his mind clearly racing, piecing together a strategy. "Every credit card she's maxing out, every condescending text she sends you, every public post about her new life is evidence. She thinks she's untouchable. We need to let her think that for as long as possible. The probate hearing on Friday, is it just a finalization?" "She called it that," Devin said. "She said I needed to be there to wear a suit." "Perfect," Marcus grinned, a cold, sharp smile that Devin had never seen on his friend before. "Her lawyer will likely present the old will, expecting a rubber stamp from the judge. They're not expecting a challenge, and they are certainly not expecting us. I'll file my appearance as your counsel tomorrow morning. We'll present the restated trust instrument at the hearing. It will be a complete surprise." He pulled out a slim, expensive-looking laptop from his $1,200 leather briefcase and started typing. "I need you to forward me every single text message, every email." And that voicemail, Devin, did you save that first voicemail? The one where she told you to pack your things? Devin's blood ran cold. He had listened to it a dozen times, each time a fresh stab of pain. He'd almost deleted it. Yeah, he whispered. I have it. Good, Marcus said, his eyes gleaming. That voicemail is our smoking gun. It's irrefutable proof of her intent. She wasn't just planning to divorce you. She was planning to leave you with nothing. Acting with malice. When we introduce this, any sympathy the judge might have had for her will evaporate. This isn't just about the money anymore, Devin. This is about justice. They spent the next hour mapping it out. Devin would play the part of the beaten-down husband. He would pack his boxes. He would be quiet, compliant. He would wear the $3,800 Armani suit she had bought him, turning her condescending gift into an instrument of her own humiliation. He would let her believe she had won. This is going to be the hardest 48 hours of your life, Marcus warned him. She is going to be cruel. She's going to try and break you down. You cannot react. You have to be a stone wall. Can you do that? Devin thought about the 8 years of his life he had poured into their marriage. He thought about the grease under his fingernails and the ache in his back. He thought about being called a hobby. He looked at his friend, the successful lawyer, sitting across from him in a humble barbecue joint, ready to go to war for him. Yeah, Devin said, his voice steady and clear for the first time in days. I can do that. The plan was set. The trap was laid. All he had to do now was survive until Friday. The next 48 hours were a descent into a surreal, cold hell. Devin moved through the motions of his life like a ghost, his body present but his mind elsewhere, focused entirely on the coming storm. He was playing a role, the defeated husband. And Karina was the perfect, unsuspecting audience. On Thursday morning, as planned, he began to pack. He started with his books, the collection of worn paperbacks and technical manuals that lined a cheap $70 bookshelf from Target. He carefully wrapped each one in newspaper and placed it in a cardboard box from the liquor store down the street. Karina was home, having declared she was taking the rest of the week off to manage her transition. She watched him from the doorway of the living room, a smug, satisfied smile on her face. She was sipping a coffee from a brand new $450 Nespresso machine that had arrived the day before. Don't forget the junk in the garage, she said, her voice light and airy. She meant the small, rented storage unit where he kept spare parts and specialty tools. The junk in that unit was worth over $8,000. I won't, he said, his voice flat, not looking at her. He kept his movements slow and deliberate, the picture of a man whose spirit had been broken. Inside, his heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Every condescending word, every dismissive glance was another piece of evidence, another nail in the coffin she was building for herself. Later that day, he went to the shop. He had to act normal, for his employee Luis's sake. He spent the afternoon working on the Cummins engine, his hands moving with the familiar, practiced grace of a surgeon. The physical labor was a relief, a way to channel the raging storm of emotions inside him into productive work. Luis, a good kid from the neighborhood, whom Devin was paying $18 an hour, kept shooting him worried glances. You okay, boss? Luis finally asked, wiping his hands on a rag. You seem quiet. Just got a lot on my mind, man, Devin replied, forcing a weak smile. He couldn't bring himself to lie to Luis, but he couldn't tell him the truth either. The lie of omission felt heavy in his gut. He was deceiving everyone now, all in service of the final, devastating truth. That evening was the worst. Karina announced she was having a celebratory dinner with her parents and had made a reservation at Uchi, one of Houston's most exclusive and expensive restaurants, where a single meal could easily cost over $500 per person. "You're not invited, obviously," she said as she was getting ready, applying a layer of $60 Chanel lipstick in the bathroom mirror. She was wearing a new dress, a sleek black number that probably cost more than their monthly rent. "But I need you to do something for me. My new BMW is being delivered tomorrow morning, a 2024-7 series. It cost $118,000. The dealership needs the final insurance information. Can you call our Geico agent and have my name removed from your policy and get the new car added to a new policy under my name only? I've already paid for it, but the paperwork needs to be in order." He stood in the doorway watching her. She was asking him to facilitate the logistics of his own replacement, to call the insurance company and formally sever one of the small, legal ties that bound them together. It was a calculated act of humiliation. "Okay," he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Good," she said, turning from the mirror to face him. She looked him up and down, her eyes lingering on his worn-out jeans and faded t-shirt. "You know, Devin, it's for the best. You're a simple man. You're happy with your simple life. I'm not. I was meant for more than this." She gestured around the apartment at the life he had built for them, as if it were a pile of garbage. "I'm finally getting what I deserve." He just nodded. He didn't trust himself to speak. The urge to scream, to tell her everything, to wipe that smug, self-satisfied look off her face was a physical force, but he held it back. He thought of Marcus's words, "Be a stone wall." He stood there, silent and still, as she picked up her $4,000 Prada bag and walked out the door, leaving the scent of her expensive $180 perfume hanging in the air like a poison. He made the call. He spoke to a polite agent at Geico, his voice sounding robotic and distant as he explained the situation. He was removing a spouse from his policy. He was setting up a new, separate policy for a brand new luxury sedan. The agent was professional and efficient, but Devin could feel the unspoken questions hanging in the air. Each yes and no was a small death, a quiet severing. After the call, he walked into the bedroom and saw the $3,800 Armani suit hanging on the back of the door in its protective bag. It was a beautiful suit, dark charcoal gray, the fabric smooth and cool to the touch. It was a costume for the final act of his sham of a marriage. He would wear her arrogance like a suit of armor. He took a deep breath, the cold, hard resolve solidifying in his chest. She thought she was celebrating her new beginning. She had no idea she was planning her own funeral. The lie was almost complete. He just had to hold on for 12 more hours. Friday morning arrived, cool and overcast. A light rain was falling over Houston, streaking the windows of the apartment and casting a somber gray light into the rooms, filled with cardboard boxes. The weather was a perfect match for the cold, methodical feeling in Devin's chest. This was it, the day of the strike. He showered and dressed with meticulous care. He slipped on the $3,800 Armani suit Karina had bought him. It fit perfectly, a cruel irony. The fine wool felt alien against his skin, so different from the rough canvas of his work clothes. As he knotted the simple dark gray tie, he looked at his reflection in the mirror. He saw a stranger looking back at him, a man wearing a costume of wealth and power that was about to become his reality. He looked at his hands, scrubbed clean but still bearing the faint lines of ingrained grease. He was still Devin Williams, the mechanic. But today he was also the instrument of a quiet, brutal justice. Karina was already gone. She had left a note on the kitchen counter, scrawled on the back of a receipt from a high-end department store. "Court is at 10 a.m. Don't be late. and don't say anything unless you're spoken to. He met Marcus in the lobby of the courthouse at 9:30 a.m. His friend was dressed in a razor-sharp navy suit carrying his $1,200 leather briefcase. He projected an aura of absolute confidence. "You ready?" Marcus asked, his eyes searching Devon's. "I'm ready," Devon said, his voice steady. "Good. Remember the plan. We let her lawyer present the old will. We let them think this is a formality. Then, when the judge asks for any other claims or documents, I stand up. You say nothing. You just watch. Let your face be blank. Let her see nothing." They walked into courtroom 4B. It was a modern, sterile room with light wood paneling and fluorescent lighting. Karina was already there, sitting at the plaintiff's table with a slick-looking lawyer in an expensive but ill-fitting suit. She looked radiant, confident. She was wearing a stark white dress, a power move designed to make her look pure and victorious. She glanced back at Devon as he entered, her expression a mixture of annoyance and pity. She gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of her head, as if embarrassed to be associated with him one last time. Devon and Marcus took their seats at the defendant's table. Devon kept his eyes forward, focused on the judge's empty bench. He could feel Karina's stare on the back of his neck. At exactly 10 a.m., the bailiff called the court to order, and Judge Mariana Reyes, a stern-looking woman in her late 50s with her hair in a tight bun, took the bench. She had a reputation for being sharp, fair, and having no patience for theatrics. "We are here today for the matter of the estate of Robert Alistair Vance," Judge Reyes began, her voice crisp. "Mr. Cochran, you represent the petitioner, Miss Karina Williams?" "I do, Your Honor," Karina's lawyer said, standing up. "We are here for a final reading and disbursement, according to the deceased's last will and testament, dated June 12th, 2014, a copy of which has been filed with the court. It's a simple matter. The will names my client, Miss Williams, as the primary beneficiary of the estate." "I have the document here," the judge said, looking down at a file. "It seems straightforward." She looked up, her eyes scanning the courtroom. "Are there any other parties with a claim on this estate?" This was the moment. Time seemed to slow down. Devon's heart was a drum in his ears. Marcus stood up slowly, gracefully. "Yes, Your Honor, Marcus Thorne, appearing on behalf of my client, Mr. Devon Williams." A flicker of confusion crossed the judge's face. Karina, who had been looking at her phone, snapped her head up. Her lawyer, Cochran, looked utterly bewildered. "Your Honor, with all due respect, Mr. Williams has no claim here. He has already agreed in principle to waive any spousal claim to the inheritance." "That is not the claim we are making, Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice calm and clear, filling the silent courtroom. "We are here to present a superseding testamentary instrument, specifically the Irrevocable Trust Amendment and complete restatement of the Robert A. Vance Living Trust, filed and recorded with the Harris County Clerk on August 17th, 2 years prior." Marcus walked forward and handed a certified copy of the document to the clerk, who passed it up to the judge. Cochran's face went pale. Karina was staring at Marcus, her mouth slightly agape, the confident smirk wiped clean from her face. Judge Reyes put on a pair of reading glasses and began to read the document. The courtroom was dead silent, the only sound the faint rustle of paper. Devon watched Karina. He saw the first tremor of fear in her eyes. She leaned over and whispered frantically to her lawyer, who just shook his head, his own face a mask of disbelief. After a long, tense minute, Judge Reyes looked up. Her expression was unreadable. "Mr. Cochran, were you aware of this document?" "No, Your Honor. This is a complete surprise," he stammered. "Well, it appears to be perfectly in order," the judge said, her eyes now fixed on Karina. "It is a complete restatement, signed, notarized, and properly filed. It explicitly revokes all previous beneficiary designations. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. Then she looked down at the document again and read aloud. Article 4, Distribution of Trust Estate upon Settler's Death. Upon my death, my entire trust estate shall be distributed, free of trust, to one sole beneficiary, Devin Williams, of Houston, Texas. The name hit the room like a physical blow. Karina made a small, strangled sound, a gasp of pure shock. Her face, which had been pale, was now ashen. Her eyes darted from the judge to Marcus, and finally to Devin. And Devin met her gaze. He felt nothing, no triumph, no anger, just a vast, cold emptiness. He showed her nothing. He was a stone wall. "This is impossible. It's a mistake. A forgery!" Karina shrieked, jumping to her feet. "Sit down, Miss Williams," Judge Reyes commanded, her voice like steel. "This is a court of law. This document is certified by the county clerk. It is, on its face, valid." She looked back at Marcus. "Mr. Thorne, do you have anything further?" "I do, Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice grave. "We believe this last-minute confusion was not an accident. My client's wife, Miss Williams, has been operating under the assumption she was the sole beneficiary. In the past 72 hours, she has acted on this assumption with extreme prejudice and bad faith toward my client." He held up a small digital audio recorder. "Your Honor, I would like to enter into evidence a voicemail message left for my client by Miss Williams this past Tuesday at 3:14 p.m. I believe it speaks directly to her character and her intent to defraud my client of his rightful inheritance, which she mistakenly believed was her own." Cochran objected, but the judge waved him off. "I'll allow it. Play the message." Marcus pressed the button, and Karina's own voice, sharp and brittle and cruel, filled the silent courtroom. "Pack tonight, the new life doesn't include you. Let's be honest, Devin. You and your little garage. It was never enough. I'll consider that my investment. And I'm cashing out. You can keep the shop. It's all you're getting. Be grateful for that." As her own words echoed through the room, every ounce of color drained from Karina's face. She looked like she had been turned to stone. The public humiliation was absolute. The judge listened, her expression hardening with every word. When the recording finished, a profound and terrible silence descended upon the room. Judge Reyes slowly removed her glasses. She looked at Karina with an expression of pure, unadulterated contempt. "Miss Williams," she said, her voice dangerously quiet, "you are a piece of work." The strike was complete. It was over. The aftermath was not an explosion, but a swift and silent collapse. Karina's world, built on a foundation of arrogant assumption and borrowed money, disintegrated in the cold, quiet air of the courtroom. The consequences cascaded, one after another, each one a direct result of her own actions in that single, hubristic week. First, the legal finality. Judge Reyes, her face a mask of judicial fury after hearing the voicemail, wasted no time. "Based on the certified and restated trust instrument, which is undeniably the controlling document in this matter," she declared, her voice ringing with authority, "I hereby order the executor of the estate of Robert A. Vance to distribute the entirety of the trust's assets, valued at approximately $20,241,000, to the sole named beneficiary, Mr. Devin Williams." She slammed her gavel down, a sound that echoed the finality of a coffin lid closing. Karina's lawyer, Cochran, simply packed his briefcase, gave her a look of utter disgust, and walked out of the courtroom without a word. He sent her a bill the next day for $15,000 for his services, a bill she had no way to pay. Second, the penthouse. That afternoon, Marcus, acting on Devon's behalf, made a phone call to the leasing office of the River Oaks high-rise. He informed them that Karina Williams, who had signed a one-year lease agreement for Penthouse B at a rate of $7,200 per month and paid a $14,400 security deposit with a credit card, had done so under fraudulent pretenses with no income or assets to support the lease. The management, fearing liability and a non-paying tenant, immediately voided the lease agreement. However, they kept the $14,400 deposit to cover their losses, and because she had taken possession of the keys, they billed her for 1 month's rent. Another $7,200 charge hit her rapidly maxing out credit card. Third, the debt. Karina, in her week-long fantasy of wealth, had been on a spending spree of epic proportions. The $118,000 BMW 7 Series she had paid for was actually a down payment of $20,000 on a financing agreement, charged to an American Express Platinum card she'd opened with the promise of her impending inheritance. When the funds didn't materialize, the financing was denied, but the $20,000 charge remained. The $3,800 Armani suit, the $4,000 Prada bag, the $4,500 television, the $500 dinner at Uchi, the new wardrobe from Neiman Marcus totaling over $12,000. It all came crashing down. In total, she had racked up over $45,000 in credit card debt in less than 5 days. With her $48,000 salary, it was a mountain she would likely never climb. The frantic, pleading voicemails began that evening, first to Devon, then to her parents. Fourth, her family. Her parents, Richard and Eleanor, who had been so quick to praise her and discard Devon, were suddenly silent. When Karina called them, hysterical and broke, expecting them to bail her out, her father's response was cold and pragmatic. "Karina, you created this mess," he'd said. "You were arrogant. You overplayed your hand. We don't have that kind of money to fix this. You're on your own." They had celebrated her for the potential of her wealth. With that potential gone, she was no longer a victor to be lauded, but a failure to be disowned. The Vance bloodline she had been so proud of offered her no comfort, only a cold shoulder. Fifth, the social fallout. The Instagram post celebrating her new digs became an artifact of her public humiliation. Word of the courtroom drama spread like wildfire through their social circles. The friends who had been so quick to congratulate her were now nowhere to be found. She became a joke, a cautionary tale whispered about at brunch tables and in office break rooms. She had to deactivate all her social media accounts, unable to face the digital ghosts of her own hubris. Devon, meanwhile, walked out of the courthouse into the now clearing afternoon. The rain had stopped, and a sliver of sunlight was breaking through the clouds. He felt no joy, no sense of victory. He just felt free. The weight of her expectations, her disappointment, and her betrayal had been lifted. He went back to the apartment, the one she had tried to kick him out of, and saw the boxes he had packed. He wasn't the one who would be leaving. He had the locks changed that afternoon, a simple $150 service call. The key she had so contemptuously dropped into her new purse was now useless. The $20 million was a staggering, life-altering sum, but in that moment, the quiet click of the new lock sliding into place felt like the richest prize of all. 1 year later, the Houston sun beat down on the blacktop of a newly expanded and immaculately clean parking lot in the 3rd Ward. The old faded sign for Williams Diesel and Duty was gone. In its place was a large modern sign that read, Vance Williams Diesel and Veterans Academy. The building itself had been transformed. The original 2 bays were still there, cleaner than ever, but attached to them was a brand new 10,000 square foot structure of steel and glass. Inside, it wasn't just a repair shop, it was a state-of-the-art classroom and training facility. Devin stood in the center of the new training bay, his hands on his hips, a proud smile on his face. He was wearing a clean, navy blue polo shirt with the Academy's logo embroidered on the chest. His old, worn-out $180 Red Wing boots had been replaced by a new pair, but they were the same model. Some things he knew were worth holding on to. Around him, a class of 12 men and women, all military veterans, were gathered around a pristine Detroit diesel DD-15 engine mounted on a stand. They were listening intently as Luis, no longer a part-time helper but the Academy's lead instructor, explained the intricacies of the fuel system. Devin had promoted him and tripled his salary to $54 an hour. With a portion of the inheritance, Devin had not just expanded his business, he had given it a soul. He'd seen how many veterans struggled to find skilled, well-paying jobs after their service. They had the discipline, the technical aptitude, and the work ethic. They just needed the specific training. The Vance Williams Academy provided that, completely free of charge to any honorably discharged veteran. They offered a 6-month certification program, with job placement assistance at the end. The repair shop was now staffed exclusively by Academy graduates and served as the hands-on portion of their training. It was thriving, more profitable than ever. But the profit was no longer the sole objective. The true bottom line was the lives being rebuilt. Devin had found a purpose beyond balancing ledgers. He had created a legacy, just as Robert Vance had hoped. He'd kept the Vance name on the sign, not for Karina, but for the lonely old man who had seen his character from afar and made a quiet, powerful investment in it. He rarely thought of Karina. Marcus had handled the divorce swiftly and silently. Devin had been more than fair. He didn't ask for a penny back of the $45,000 she had squandered. He let her keep her car, a modest used Toyota she bought after the BMW was repossessed. He simply signed the papers and moved on. The last he heard, she had lost her job at the law firm due to the scandal and was working as a receptionist in a suburban dental office, living in a small apartment far from the glittering lights of River Oaks. He felt no malice toward her, only a distant pity. He had forgiven her not for her sake, but for his. Holding on to that anger would have been an anchor, and he was determined to move forward. He walked over to his office, a small, neat space with a window overlooking the training floor. On his desk, next to a picture of him and his team of instructors and graduates, was a simple framed piece of paper. It was a check for $500, written from the Academy's account to his mother. He had paid back her investment, the birthday gift from all those years ago that Karina had tried to twist into a weapon against him. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to him. True wealth, he now understood, had nothing to do with the number in your bank account. He was wealthier now, with a net worth in the tens of thousands, than he had been with $20 million sitting untouched. Wealth was the satisfaction of a hard day's work. It was the pride in an apprentice's eyes when they finally understood a complex system. It was the quiet hum of a perfectly tuned engine. It was purpose. It was building something that would outlast him, something that gave back more than it took. Karina had sought her value in things, in purses, cars, and penthouses. He had found his in people, and that was a fortune no one could ever take away. What do you think is the true measure of a person's wealth? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Love Beyond Pride for more stories of justice and new beginnings.
Welcome to the Story Channel. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few notes. The content in this video uses AI-generated images and voice narration, combined with the channel's creative editing. Everything is intended solely for entertainment purposes and does not depict or reflect any real events or real people. Hope you enjoy the story and have a great time watching.